community networks in the United States. This is part of a larger stream of work on community networks that we have done, a lot of which has been both under the aegis of the IEEE Internet Inclusion Initiative as part of the evidence-based research group, as well as a research project called the One World Connected Research Project based out of the University of Pennsylvania, which has been supported by a lot of people, including ISOC. Jane has been a super, super supportive person. So has Microsoft. Melissa Sassy was right here, and a huge host of other stakeholders. We are interested in gathering empirical data on trying to understand what the stories of actual community network deployments are. We have collected, amongst community network deployments, we have about 22, which are global, which cover about 12 to 13 countries. The ones that we have in the US are 2. And I'm going to give both of their experiences in an effort to get to what are the things that policy might be missing, or what are the things that we can learn for better policy making in this space. So the first story that I'm going to tell you about is that of Little Tokyo Wireless. It is a lapsed community network. It is a community network that existed in 2007 to 2009 in Los Angeles. Which was trying to connect a Japanese-American community in Los Angeles. The community network got a lot of funding from the LA Community Redevelopment Authority to the tune of about $250,000. And it worked well for 2 years, provided free connectivity for about 300 residents in a very small community of Japanese Americans, and then lapsed. The story or why it lapsed is almost as interesting as the story of the fact that it existed. A lot of the funding that this Community Redevelopment Authority was giving out ended by law due to the fact that they changed the city council's. Is this better? Yes, sorry. So there was a change in legislation at the local municipal level that allowed for the funds that were being given earlier to the community network to be taken away. And because they were providing this service for free, and because they were considered a cultural project, because a lot of the community redevelopment was actually being done with respect to the funding was being used to develop some local content on the Japanese American heritage that existed in that area, as well as provide free connectivity through a landing page, which had some of those details for people who were visiting. Changes in legislation pretty much killed that network very, very quickly. And they did not have, or they did not build into their system a non-grant-based source of revenue. This meant that they lost a lot of money very, very quickly in terms of high labor costs that were needed to maintain the network, and they did not have people to maintain the nodes that were running the network in this small town, and it failed. And that has key lessons in terms of policy making, as well as in terms of the way community networks develop, one of which has already been emphasized, which is that we need to look at different ways of building sustainability into the business that we, or if not a business, into the work that is being done in order to maintain networks, because it takes labor and it takes actual people who can dedicate actual hours of time. And a lot of times that's not really considered by a lot of these communities in a very long-term perspective. So that's something that's one key takeaway from that. The second is also to be able to plan for alternate sources of funding, right? Even if it is grant-based funding, there are different sources that could be tapped into, which the community network either was not aware of. When we spoke to the founder of this labs network, they suggested that they did not have access to different sources of funding, or did not know about the different sources of funding that existed, which means that data on what these sources are might be super crucial to make sure that more and more of this information is made available. The second story that I'm going to talk to you about is one of Native American communities in Southern California being connected. This is called TVDNet, Southern California Tribal Digital Village. Is still a very thriving community network that connects 19 indigenous nations. Matt Frantanen, who's one of the founding members of that network, is a great guy to listen to, but also has done incredible work in connecting Native American communities and bringing their issues in the policy space for like almost 15 years now. So this network started in 2003 in Southern California, in a very mountainous region, where there was like isolated communities that do not have access to, that did not have any kind of access to either cellular connectivity or Wi-Fi connectivity. The network initially started on like, so they use like unlicensed spectrum to connect these communities, and they have like, they don't have the federal standards that we currently impose on speed, right? They don't say we need like 1 gigabit speed or like incredibly high speeds. The goal that they set for themselves was reasonable to them, as they claim. They said it was to make sure that every kid in that community or in their communities has access to enough internet connectivity to get to do their homework. So they had a 6 up, 3 down link, which is quite basic, which was enough for them to be able to give access to every school student at their home at prices that we could not imagine if they were to like build a lot more like internet access into the backhaul, right? So they currently provide like a staged plan, which is that you have like a basic service that you get for about $20 a month, and that goes up all the way to $64.99 a month. The speed obviously changes because like of the load that you will consume at $64.99 as opposed to a $20 to a $35 pack. But there are lessons that we can learn from this, and it's been working quite successfully for like almost 15 years now. It started in 2003. It's like grown in size. It started with 1 village. It's now got 19 sovereign nations. It's being run by the Southern California Tribes Association, Tribal Chairmen's Association, which has been an entity that's been like speaking about the issues or taking care of the issues of Native American nations in Southern California since 1962. And the things that we can learn from that experience are twofold. When I spoke to Matt Frantanen for the first time and asked him the question, what are the things that you think are things that other people who are starting in this field should know? He said the first thing is, it's really important to get like an idea of what we are looking for to support, as opposed to just let's build networks for the sake of building networks. Like, it's important to tie that to the kinds of things that networks can do, because it builds buy-in for people to be able to invest their resources and their time in maintaining that network and building that network, especially if they're a community network, but also that we make sure that there is a model that like keeps that network running, right? It shouldn't be based on the one person, and once that person goes away or dies, they aren't able to like sustain that effort anymore. So creating that structure, it could be, as Jane said earlier in the day, through the fact that they incorporate as an NGO, or it could be just that they have a dedicated structure or a hierarchy that makes sure that people are able to have specific responsibilities and roles that can sustain that network. The other thing is also that you do need revenue, right? It doesn't have to be a profit-making entity, but you need revenue to just sustain and pay for backhaul. And the last thing that they emphasized, and both community networks had, was the role of partnership. So the Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association had this really innovative partnership with the state libraries, which allowed them to get backhaul for quite like lesser prices than they would have otherwise, because they were able to tap in to the funding sources that state libraries get, which otherwise you would not be able to do as a sovereign nation, because the sovereign nations under the broadband plans don't get, like, as I understood it, don't get the same status in terms of their ability to apply for funding or apply for grants, which means that it needs to be innovatively like thought about in terms of how you reach out to different pockets of partners, and how you can get access to resources to be able to sustain networks. The second thing is with Little Tokyo Wireless, the community network that lapsed, it had a very long-standing partnership with the LA Community Redevelopment Organization, because it was trying to portray itself as a cultural rejuvenation entity. I think that those kinds of partnerships are also key and are sources that we don't usually think of typically when we think of deploying networks on the ground. So in terms of partnerships, there are like, the coalition isn't really just network operators or network providers or technical community people. Can often be people that are like outside of the traditional telecommunication space, but can often be incredibly useful ways of getting like partnerships and build networks that can sustain communities for a long period of time. So those are the two findings that I had that are from the domestic like case studies that we've developed. We have got more, and like Jane has already mentioned a lot of them. There are some more of these case studies that we have developed that you can find on our website, and I encourage you to check them out and speak to me in case you have more questions.
Thank you.
Okay, well, Lindsay, who we'd hoped to have talk now, thanks for that. Thank you very much. Seems to have scarpered, so it's a shame because she's a very impressive young lady who works for the city and in places like Brownsville and stuff like this, doing really valuable infrastructure work at a very grassroots level. And so maybe we'll get her another time. She did present at the Mozilla Challenge thing a few months back. I wanted to sort of talk about, if I criticized Bruce for talking about the past earlier in the week, but, that those who don't remember the past are condemned to repeat it. And, the Internet Society is now in its 26th year. When we were 20 years, we started something called the Internet Hall of Fame. In there, you'll find all these people that basically hooked up their countries from scratch, that built applications from scratch. The guy who invented Archie, the first search engine, was from Barbados. And, when they hooked up the schools by having a system of store and forward, we've looked at things that have really changed everything, that are, protocols like BitTorrent or, stuff like this, that there's always room to do things. But I do recommend going back there and just browsing through that thing, because you'll see a lot of people. I'd like to pass it to, and then obviously join the Internet Society if you're not already a member. I'd just like to pass it to Jane for her final thoughts.
I would just say it's also free to join, so we're not trying to get money out of you. But thank you for this event. It's been amazing, and I'm embarrassed to say that I learned a lot about things I should have known about in the US, and I'm going to hit some of you up to come up there and talk to you more, especially the team at Silicon Harlem, about the financing issues, because we're trying to put a paper together for folks that we're working with, and it might be just better to have videos of you or podcasts about what you've done. In any event, thanks so much. I think this was super, and I hope we can do more of these. I don't want to keep talking and interfere, so over back to you, Jolly.
Oh, is the camera just on me here? So, first off, thank you all for sharing experiences and thoughts and perspectives. And these kind of convenings and discussions are very important to looking at the different shared issues that we're concerned with and finding a collective and holistic path forward. And I think, that's a good way to look at the multi-stakeholder model, which is an abstraction of bringing together all of the different interested parties that have a vested interest in a particular issue area. But that's how we convene the Internet Governance Forum for the USA, and that's how all of the Internet Governance Forum initiatives convene. And we will be having our event July 27th at CSIS in Washington, D.C. We will have the Jolly there to make sure that people can participate remotely, of course. And we will have a session there that will focus on the holistic approach to connectivity from the infrastructure to the economic opportunity, and that's something that I think we heard a lot here today. And kind of in that light, I think that this is a good opportunity to maybe collect closing thoughts from anybody who would like to provide, you know, a sentence or two of what you would like to see taken into this event in the summer. And I would encourage you all to participate during the event, but as I put together a report of this event in the context of the other IGF USA on the road events that have happened across the country, if there's anything that we would like to see be taken forward into that, I think this is a really good opportunity to open the floor to anybody that has any closing thoughts.
Just a small suggestion. If there is some way by which the experts and the people who are working on community networks, starting with whoever was present in this event, if we can interconnect and share even on a mailing thread or on a mailing list or in some other way, that would exchange a lot of ideas about what problems were solved and how and what kind of problems are to be solved. And that would also help us. We are interested in building a community network.
So I'm going to put this out as a challenge both to ourselves and to highlight the fact that this really still shouldn't exist. 20 years later, why is there still a digital divide?
One thing I wanted to do was introduce Edwin Reed Sanchez. Edwin is I spoke about OtherNet earlier in Bushwick. Edwin works on OtherNet and also has an ISP that actually does cellular connectivity in Nicaragua. So he's a great person to know if you're doing projects in New York City. And
Just say that I have a very good video of Edwin at Radical Networks, I think.
Anyway, also that we as a community in New York City, we have a lot of opportunity right now, and I think, you know, between ISOC, the Digital Equity Laboratory, and a lot of the other folks that have spoken today, that we really should be talking more and organizing more. As you said, you know, we have the franchising process that can open up some opportunities. We have the RFI that's still open. And so we should think about some of the things that came up today and how we could work together. For example, on backhaul, internet exchange points. Maybe other people can think of some of the other things. Sustainability or funding, business models, ongoing, you know, so these are all things that I would love to stay in conversation with folks about. I think there are a number of, you know, other digital equity issues that we can all be talking about. So I will commit to, from the platform of the Digital Equity Laboratory at the New School, to bring folks together and share news. And we'll try to keep people connected as a community. So it's a network of networks. That's the whole principle of the internet.
Anybody else? Oh, we got back here. Good. Sorry, we missed you earlier.
No, sorry. Okay, I'm sorry I missed earlier, but I just wanted to say thank everybody that's here. Stu and I, my partner Stu, we've been doing this for quite a long time, and we're very happy that all of us, that now we have a community of people who are looking to do things for the community, both in the community, by the community, for and with the community. So I think what we should be all endeavoring to do is to have a community of winners, not just one winner, not just one person, not just one group, because everybody here believes that they have a damn good idea about doing things, and there's a lot of doers here in this room. And we should all be trying to figure out how to work together so that we'll have not only just a community, but a community of winners that will go out. If we're a community of winners, we'll be able to help the community and the people we serve to be winners. So that would be my thing. And thanks, Dustin, for coming. So I want to personally thank everybody for coming, because we've been around a long time.
No, thank you. Anyone else? No? Well, I don't, this isn't. I'd say eight kind of regions, because like the Bay Area is all over the place, and there are other, you know, I went to Albuquerque, but I was in different hubs within that, but I'd say like 8 different, yeah. So the path of my road trip, I started in my hometown of Aberdeen, Washington, and then I drove south down through Portland, then down through the Bay Area, then Phoenix, Albuquerque, Santa Fe, long haul up to Detroit, and then even though this part is USA themed, I did dip up into Canada for RightsCon, went to Toronto, and then I came down here, and this is my final stop before I head back to DC. One thing that and this isn't really fully baked out in my mind yet, but Greta had this great image on her slide where there was a ladder up to the roof where they were putting satellites in, correct? Or wireless routers. And she had, prior to that, mentioned that, you know, the community networks or the initiatives that have failed are because somebody helicoptered in. So maybe the biggest takeaway from this is that if we're going to be putting connectivity on these rooftops, we need to provide the communities with the ladders and not just drop something down from a helicopter. Right. But other than that, thank you all. And I think what Jolly and I can do is gather all of the resources that were shared today and follow up with some sort of email that kind of aggregates them and make sure that nothing's lost here.
What I'm likely going to have to do is to get Jane to do a repeat performance, because we totally mangled her presentation.
No worries on that. But you know, you guys could do also is talk to Mark and make sure we get you a spot on the North American Bureau's website.
Yeah.
We can host all the data. This was some of the stories here, or in just the community building, financing, whatever. Awesome, and really be inspirational for other people. And it's amazing how much everything that's going on in New York is also related to some of the places we're also working. So it's very cool.